constriction of the vessels to cause increased blood pressure, right? It also is a polypeptide, again, same 9 amino acids, just 2 different ones than what we see with oxytocin. And again, it has the disulfide bond linkage between the 2 cysteines, which forms your ring structure on there. And again, it's the tail, the 3-member tail, which is the reactive receptor area for it. And as far as the 3-member tail, that's again is the recognition, and we can change. If you look at that, see where the arginine is in there? We can change that arginine with another amino acid to make it synthetic, and we get rid of the vasopressor effects, and we just get the antidiuretic effects. If you're treating an animal for diabetes insipidus, do you want to give it something that's going to really run the blood pressure crazy? Or you want to give it something that just has those effects upon the kidney? So we use a synthetic ADH, usually for treatment of diabetes insipidus. Okay? Now, as far as, again, we take that arginine and put the L-arginine separated with the D-arginine. What's the D and L mean? That's the stereochemical structure of it. Same chemical structure, but different conformation. So we change that, and that gets rid of those vasopressor. It retains the antidiuretic effects of it. Okay, so as far as release of ADH, basically this is a duplication of what we talked about, vasopressin. Now, what causes the release, though, are those central peripheral baronosmal receptors, and they're going to send nervous stimuli up to the paraventricular supraoptic nucleus to cause basically the signal to come down and tell the axonal endings to release the hormone that's down there. Okay, and again, the neurophysin is what takes it down, and when it gets out into the blood, it's dissociates, and the neurophysin can be recycled or it can be degraded. Now, as far as mechanical disruption of the neurohypophyseal tract by trauma, tumor, or surgery temporarily, what's that going to do to ADH? Mess up the tract and everything, you're going to decrease your ability to have ADH, right? And now, if you can regenerate those axons, it's going to take about 2 weeks. You'll restore that ADH function, but if it happens at a high enough level, and basically the bodies die in the hypothalamus, can neurons really replace themselves after they're dead? No. And so you can have a permanent ADH deficiency. And so what are you going to have to be giving that animal for the rest of its life?
ADH.
The ADH vasopressin. Okay. Now, as far as regulation release of ADH, again, the osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus respond to increased osmolarity of the blood. So what would the increase in osmolarity of the blood tell you about blood levels? If it's increased, that means it's very concentrated. So what do you need to put in there to reduce the osmolarity of water? And so how are you going to get the water? Basically, prevent the kidney from coming out. Will it also stimulate the thirst center? Yes, so you take in more water like that. Okay. Now, receptors in the esophagus and stomach can sense water intake. And so, basically, if you take a whole lot of water in at one time, what's that going to do to ADH? Initially you get a slight increase, but then it's going to decrease it because those sensors will say, hey, you're taking in too much. Okay? That's one problem. What happens if you've been out in the desert without water for, well, let's say a week? Should you take a bunch of water as soon as you get hold of it? Guess what's going to do? Those ADH receptors are going to be inhibited, and the ADH release is going to be inhibited, and you just lose it. So that's why you take it back gradually, so that you can readapt when you swim or something. Okay. Now, as far as volume receptors in the atria of the heart and baroreceptors in the carotid sinus, you all know about those, right? They detect decreased blood volume, low blood pressure, and they will transmit signals to the hypothalamus, to the nervous system, up to the thirst center, and that's going to cause the hypothalamus to stimulate.
So if you have a patient that comes in like severely dehydrated, like say 12%, do you give a bolus? Do you start them off slow and do it continuously? Like how much?
Depends upon, if they're in hypovolemic shock, you're going to give a bolus. But there's formulas for that. We'll talk about that when we get into clinical pathology next semester. We'll go through all that kind of stuff. But you can give so much percentage of the fluid deficit at one time. But you got to be very careful, because if you give too big a bolus, you want to worry about giving an animal more. Have a dead animal disease. The AD on that one, I don't know what species it is, okay? All right. Now, basically, if you're looking at these baroreceptors and everything, that's what tells you got to release this stuff so that you can increase that blood volume. Does it do you any good to have a bunch of nutrients and cells in the blood if you don't have enough fluid to get them transported? And that's why you want to increase and regulate the volume of fluids as far as the blood is concerned. Okay?
You got names in the hypothalamus, that's osmoreceptors, and you got names in the atria, and that's volume receptors. Is there a specific name for the one in the esophagus? It just says receptors. So okay.
Usually they're mainly are going to be volume receptors, but stress receptor type thing. Okay, this is just a diagram showing you the connection as far as secretion of ADH with baroreceptors. You can see down here in the carotid and also in the aortic down here, how they send signals up into the vasomotor center up here. And you can see this is a blow up of what's happening here. It's over here. Of course, I can't do that right now. This right here is just, this area right here is blown up over here. Okay, so you can see what's going on. Okay? And so what they're going to stimulate those nuclei to send the impulses down to release the hormone from their carrying bodies down there to get into the blood to cause the effect. Okay? And if what if the baroreceptors detect that your blood pressure is too high, what type of effect does that want to have upon ADH secretion? It's going to decrease it. Okay, inhibit it so you can let fluid out to decrease the volume, so that should decrease the pressure. Okay. As you can see, it has to be very closely regulated. Can you overdo it? Yes, that's why it's very closely regulated. Because would it do animal any good to have hypovolemia? No, so that's why they got to regulate when to shut on, when to shut off, as far as these receptors are concerned. Now, as far as osmotic regulation of ADH, it's basically the main action of ADH is to conserve body water and regulate the tonicity. And the tonicity is the osmolarity or the osmotic gradient as far as the body fluids are concerned. And it's primarily regulated, again, by osmotic and volume stimuli. We just said we talked about the volume stimuli, and the baroreceptors and the vasoreceptors and all that pick up different things. Now, water deprivation increases the osmolarity of plasma, right? What does it do to the concentration of solvents in there? Solutes rather in there. They're going to increase. And so that's going to activate the hypothalamic osmoreceptors, and they're going to stimulate ADH release. Why do you want ADH to come out in that respect? Because what do you have to do to that very high tonicity? You've got to dilute it, and that's why you increase the water reabsorption and stuff. Okay. Now, conversely, water ingestion suppresses osmoreceptor firing, consequently shuts off the ADH release. In other words, it's very tightly regulated because you don't want to overdo it in either direction. Now, when you got disease processes, that's when you have problems with this. Now, ADH is initially suppressed by reflex neurostimulation shortly after water is swallowed. And that's by those pressure receptors and stuff in the esophagus. And so they slow down the ADH until the water gets absorbed, and then they lose it down in the mouth. Now, if you absorb it and the body detects it needs more water, then it's going to release more ADH to prevent you from losing that water. Okay. Now, plasma ADH will decline further after water is absorbed and osmolarity falls, and then you should start the cycle over again if it's concentrated. So y'all see the mechanism, what it's responding to? It's responding to volume and osmolarity going on. And this is just the pathway by which ADH secretion is lowered and water excretion raised when excess water is ingested. You just follow that flow cycle down. How everything gets decreased. Now, if you've got the other problem where you have too little water, what do you want the kidneys to do? Conserve as much as possible, so those arrows will go the other way, as far as this reflex is concerned. Now, as far as the plasma osmolarity is directly increased by administration of solutes, and only those solutes that do not freely or rapidly penetrate cell membranes, such as sodium, will cause ADH release. Whereas urea can do it also. But if it's something that can move in and out of the cells, it's not going to be very effective, because if something gets too high in the blood, what will it do? And so you don't want that to happen. Now, where's your high sodium concentrations? Intra or extracellular? Extracellular. Well, levels intracellularly. What's the main cation intracellularly?
Potassium.
Potassium. Now, potassium has some osmotic gradient, but not quite as much as sodium does. Now, does the chlorine have much to do with it?
Yeah.
Chlorine just goes wherever sodium goes. So it doesn't have a direct relationship like that. Now, conversely, substances that enter cells rapidly, such as urea, won't change the osmotic equilibrium, but they will pull water in. So what's going to stimulate ADH release? The osmotic gradient or the decreased water? The decreased water. So urea is also, remember, what's the countercurrent mechanism? What's the countercurrent mechanism in the kidney? Well,
The tubule.
what tubule parallels the collecting dust?
The
The one that does that is the ascending limb of Henle, right?
yeah.
What is absorbed in the ascending limb of Henle?
Water. No, sodium.
Sodium. Y'all remember that? How you go through that?
Yeah.
What's absorbed in the descending limb of Henle?
Water.
That's water. So it concentrates the sodium, and then the sodium
It's
goes out
getting
to the interstitial tissue
hypotonic, right?
in the collecting dose, right? And what does the function there?
Oh, god damn it.
I just know one takes water and the other one takes sodium. That's all I
Okay, what's its
got.
function there? How's it concentrate urine?
Okay, no, I just have to ask.
How's it do that?
Why you think that? Hold on. I might not even listen.
ADH works down there, right?
I don't know if I should ask
ADH
it, but-
basically cannot pass through the intact tubular wall.
Oh.
But when you have that osmotic gradient over there, the ADH causes opening of aquapores. It goes in on the vascular side of the tubule, causes changes to open up holes basically in the epithelium so that water can pass through. What's pulling the water through? The osmotic gradient over there. So that's why sodium is essential as far as the function of ADH. If you don't have that gradient and you have plenty of ADH, it'll open up the pores, you'll pull some water back in, but not very much. Okay, so they have to work concurrently with each other. All right? And so basically, urea also helps to form that countercurrent mechanism because it will help to pull water in. But sodium is by far the most important. Okay? Now, didn't we go through the tubules as far as specific gravity before?
Specific gravity?
Very specific gravity?
No.
What's isoscenaria mean?
Equivalent?
What's the definition of isoscenaria? It's the same concentration as plasma without the proteins. So if you've got, you have to marry the membrane. Okay? You've got the blood over here, the urine channel starting down here, proximal tubule starting down here. What's going to be the specific gravity? Normal kidney. What will be the specific gravity of the tubular fluid on that, just as it comes into the glomerular membrane? Does protein pass freely through the glomerulus? Does fluid? So you're putting the plasma without the protein. So that's why we call it isoscenaria, because if you take the specific gravity of plasma, remove the proteins from it, what you have left is the isoscenaria level. That's 1.08 to 1.012, depending on little variation as far as species. Large animals a little bit higher than that. So when beginning the proximal convoluted tubule, it's isoscenaria. What will the specific gravity of the tubular fluid be at the end of the proximal convoluted tubule? What's the most active component of the tubular system? What has the most microvilli, the thickest epithelial lining? The proximal convoluted tubule. The proximal convoluted tubule pulls in equal volumes of solute and solvent. So are you going to change the specific gravity much after you get to the end of it? No, it's still, you're pulling out equal water and equal solvent. You're not changing the relationship. So it's going to be isoscenaria mainly, maybe a little slightly higher, but not much, at the end of the proximal convoluted tubule. Goes down that descending limb of Henle, what comes out? Water. So what's the specific gravity going to be down there at the little bend of that limb? Hypersonuric. It'll be higher than isosonuric. Goes up the ascending limb of Henle, what comes out? Solvent. So what's the specific gravity going to be as you get into the distal convoluted tubule? Hypostonuric, below isosonuric. All right, now if you don't have ADH, what's the urine going to be when it comes out the end? Hypostonuric, less than 1.008. Now, if ADH is working, but what helps with that gradient? What helps the kidney to absorb sodium? aldosterone. If you don't have aldosterone, what happens to that gradient? Is it going to be as good? You'll open up the pores with ADH, and a little bit of water will come in, but it's not going to be enough to concentrate. It'll be slightly above isostenuric, but not normal. Everybody follow that? Now, as you go out, when you're concentrating, and when it comes out in the bladder, normal should be hyperstenuric, right? Hyperstenuric means high concentration. Now, everybody follow that? So if my ADH is not working, it was hypostenuric coming into it, what's it going to be coming out? Hypostenuric down into the tubules. And that's one of the things which we use to help us diagnose problems with ADH is very, very low urine-specific gravity. Everybody follow that? There's a little diagram I think that's somewhere in the syllabus or something. You see that anyway. It's a nice clean path question. I use that as a bonus question on clean path. Okay. So as far as ADH, it is very sensitive to changes in osmolarity. It doesn't take a whole lot. Just a 1 to 2% changes of 1 to 2%. In other words, 1 to 2% above the normal range can cause an increase in ADH. So it's very, very sensitive. And it has to be, because can you survive if your blood osmolarity is too high? No. So very, very sensitive on that. Also, if you lower them a few percent, it's usually about 5%, it will basically shut off ADH. So it's very sensitive to those osmotic changes. Okay? Now, ADH is stimulated by a decrease in blood volume. I already said that, right? The cardiac output or blood pressure, right? So, what if I have blood loss, hemorrhage? What's that going to do to blood volume? If it's external hemorrhage, usually it's going to decrease it. And if you decrease it, the blood volume, what's it do to blood pressure? It decreases. So what's going to get released? ADH. Now, ADH will replace the fluids, right? Can that cause a more aggravation of anemia? Yes, it can, because you're diluting what's there. In other words, if I got mad at my husband, and I took out my knife and slashed his wrist, I wouldn't never do that. And he's bleeding there, and I said, oh my gracious, I better stop this or I might get arrested and put in prison, right? So I stopped the bleeding. So I'm going to monitor him. So in the first hour I do a CBC. Am I going to see any change?
No.
No, because he lost equal volumes of fluid, electrolytes, and blood cells, right? What's going to come back first? The fluid, because does it make any difference how many cells you have in the blood if you don't have enough volume to transport it? No. So the fluid comes in. So what's going to happen to my packed cell volume? Decrease. What about my total protein concentration? Decrease also. So after the first 4 hours, it's going to be perfectly normal. So I didn't do anything to it. Blood all over the floor, but I didn't do anything. All right. So I continue to monitor. Then what will I see after 4 or 5 hours?
You don't see any rise.
No, they're going to drop because the fluid, you've lost more quickly more fluid, so they're going to drop. The fluid's going to come back in, right? So it goes on to dilute what's in there. Because that can be the most rapid response, is fluid response. Is the bone marrow going to be able to respond like that, or is it going to take a while? Can the liver respond by releasing albumin very quickly, or is it going to take a while? It's going to take about 12 hours, 8 to 12 hours for the proteins to come back out there. So your osmolarity will start to increase. What about my cell count? It's going to take 72 hours to see much of a significant change as far as the PCV is concerned. It's going to take 1 week for full response and 2 weeks to resolve it if I don't cut him again. I'd never do that to him. Although yesterday I felt like it. I was sitting there all day working on those practicals. But anyway.
Was that the same thing that you were mentioning during the young lady's grand round presentation? Like with
So depending on the time it happens. So in other words, if the owner brings in the dog, he just got hit by a car a few minutes ago, and the dog's PCV is markedly low, his total solids are kind of low. Did that just happen then, or was it several hours ago? But you're not going to tell the owner they're lying. You just understand that, Because if it happened right away, you're not going to see much. Now, what if it happened a week ago and the PCV's way down and everything? What does that tell you better do? You better give some blood because that bone marrow's not responding. Okay, so time, knowing a little bit about the physiological responses, normal times and stuff, will help you from killing a bunch of animals, not people, animals. Okay? Right. I've never gotten that mad at my husband before. course, huh? Okay. And besides, you know, they say activities which reduce blood pressure increase ADH. Activities that increase blood pressure will suppress ADH. So what if you're out there exercising like crazy? What do you think your blood pressure is? High. So what about your ADH? Well, if you're out there and you got, much increased blood pressure, at that time you're going to suppress urination because you're going to have if you're out there exercising like crazy, you won't have to stop and pee, right? Forget my language, but you know what I mean, okay? So, but now after you stop exercising, is ADH going to be released? And what are you going to want to do? Drink 10 gallons of water, right? And can that be a little detrimental to your GI tract and everything? So what did I tell you all about exercise? Okay, now as far as blood volume or pressure regulation of ADH, hypovolemia is preceded by your baroreceptors, your pressure receptors in the carotid aortic areas. Also stress receptors in the left atrium and pulmonary veins and the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Y'all remember the juxtaglomerular apparatus? What's it secrete? Renin. What's renin do? Angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Is that the active form of angiotensin? So what gives you the active form?
Angiotensin 2.
Right. Where it's located where? In the lungs. Gives you angiotensin 2. What does angiotensin 2 do?
That, yeah.
Peripheral arteriolar, afferent arteriolar constriction. Okay? Y'all remember all that, right? What else does angiotensin cause release of?